Jungkook disguises himself as a nurse to see Jimin in secret, but one doctor recognizes him and exposes the shocking truth. "Take off your mask, Nurse Kim, unless you want me to call security right now." Jungkook froze with one trembling hand still gripping the metal tray beside Jimin's hospital bed, while the fluorescent lights above them buzzed like trapped insects and the sharp scent of antiseptic burned inside his lungs. For 3 terrifying seconds, Jungkook could hear nothing except Jimin's weak breathing. Then the doctor stepped closer. Jungkook lowered his eyes, praying that the white surgical mask, blue scrubs, cap and glasses were enough to hide the face that Jimin had known for years. They were not. The doctor's expression hardened as he studied Jungkook's eyes. "You are not a nurse," the doctor said quietly. Jimin's fingers moved beneath the blanket. His eyes opened. "Jungkook," the single word shattered the disguise. Jungkook's heart seemed to stop. He had imagined 100 ways he might see Jimin again, but never this one, never with a doctor standing between them. Never while Jimin was pale beneath hospital lights, an IV needle taped to his hand, his lips dry and his usually bright eyes clouded by exhaustion. Jungkook slowly removed his glasses. The doctor stared at him in disbelief. Jimin stared at him as if he were looking at a ghost. "Jungkook," Jimin whispered again, and this time his voice broke. Jungkook swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." The doctor immediately reached for the emergency phone. "You have no idea what you've done. This patient needs rest, and you entered a restricted ward under false identity." "Please," Jungkook said. His voice was barely audible. "Just give me 2 minutes." "Jungkook, why are you dressed like that?" Jimin asked. Jungkook looked at Jimin, and every carefully constructed excuse disappeared from his mind. He had spent the entire night learning how to walk like hospital staff, how to carry a tray without shaking, how to keep his head lowered when passing security cameras. He had memorized the ward number, the nurses' schedules, the location of the elevators, even the sound of the automatic doors. He had done everything because he had been terrified that if he waited another day, he might never see Jimin again. "Because they wouldn't let me see you," Jungkook finally answered. Jimin's expression changed. Pain came first, then confusion, then something dangerously close to tears. "Who wouldn't let you?" Jungkook looked toward the doctor. The doctor's jaw tightened. "This is not the place for whatever story you are trying to create." "It isn't a story," Jungkook said. "Someone told me Jimin didn't want me here." Jimin slowly pushed himself higher against the pillow despite the pain in his ribs. "I never said that." Jungkook stared at him. "What? I never told anyone I didn't want you here." The room suddenly felt colder. Jungkook's fingers tightened around the edge of the tray. For days, Jungkook had believed Jimin was deliberately avoiding him. Every unanswered message, every silent phone call, every locked hospital room door had convinced Jungkook that Jimin wanted distance. But Jimin was looking at him now with the same wounded confusion Jungkook had carried inside his chest. "Then why did nobody let me see you?" Jungkook asked. Jimin shook his head. "I don't know." The doctor stepped between them. "Enough, Nurse Kim or whoever you are, leave the room." Jungkook didn't move. "Doctor, I need to know what happened to Jimin." "You are not authorized to receive that information." "Then tell me why his medical file says he was brought here under another name." Silence fell. Jimin's eyes widened. The doctor's expression changed for the first time. Jungkook noticed it immediately. Fear, not anger, not annoyance. Fear. Jungkook had always been good at noticing small things about Jimin, but tonight he realized he was beginning to notice things about everyone else too. The doctor looked toward the hallway, then lowered his voice. "Did you see that file? In the records room. You entered the records room." "Yes, then you saw something you were never supposed to see." Jungkook's stomach tightened. Jimin looked from the doctor to Jungkook. "What are you talking about?" The doctor did not answer. Jungkook stepped closer. "Why was Jimin's name changed?" "It was for privacy." "Then why was another patient assigned his identification number?" The doctor's face went pale. Jimin stared at Jungkook. "Jungkook, what did you find?" Jungkook hesitated. He remembered the file. He remembered the red stamp across the top. He remembered the strange handwritten note attached to the final page. Most importantly, he remembered one sentence that had made his blood run cold. "Do not allow this patient to leave the hospital without authorization." "I found a note," Jungkook said slowly. "It said someone was watching you." Jimin's breathing became uneven. "Watching me?" The doctor immediately turned toward the door. Jungkook followed his gaze. A shadow moved across the narrow glass window. Someone was standing outside, someone who had been listening. The doctor locked the door. Jimin's eyes filled with fear. "Who is that?" Nobody answered. Jungkook moved instinctively toward Jimin's bed, forgetting his disguise, forgetting the doctor, forgetting every rule he had broken to get there. He reached for Jimin's hand. Jimin's fingers immediately closed around his. The warmth of Jimin's palm almost broke Jungkook. For days he had imagined holding that hand again, but he had never imagined it would happen under the cold white lights of a hospital room while both of them wondered whether someone was trying to keep them apart. "Jungkook," Jimin whispered, "I thought you abandoned me." Jungkook's eyes burned. "I thought you wanted me gone." Jimin shook his head. "I was waiting for you." Those 4 words struck harder than any accusation. Jungkook lowered his forehead against Jimin's hand. "I came as soon as I could." Behind them the doctor remained silent. Then the hospital lights suddenly flickered. Once, twice, 3 times, the door handle moved. Jimin gripped Jungkook's hand tighter. Jungkook stood and turned toward the door, his disguise forgotten completely. The handle stopped moving. A folded piece of paper slowly slid beneath the door. Nobody moved. Jungkook crouched and picked it up. There were only 6 words written on it. "You should have stayed away, Jungkook." Jungkook stared at the paper until the 6 words seemed to blur beneath his shaking fingers. "You should have stayed away, Jungkook." The message was written in black ink, each letter unnaturally precise, as if whoever had written it had taken time to make sure the name hurt. Jimin watched Jungkook's face from the hospital bed, his fingers still wrapped around Jungkook's hand. "What does it say?" Jimin asked. Jungkook folded the paper immediately. "Nothing." Jimin's eyebrows drew together. "Jungkook. It's nothing you need to worry about. You always say that when something is wrong." Jimin's voice was weak, but there was an old familiarity in it that made Jungkook's chest ache. Even in a hospital bed surrounded by machines and strangers, Jimin still knew exactly when Jungkook was lying. The doctor walked toward them and extended his hand. "Give it to me." Jungkook hesitated before handing over the note. The doctor read it once, then again. His face became unreadable. "You recognize the handwriting," Jungkook said. "No," the answer came too quickly. Jungkook narrowed his eyes. "You do." "I said no." "Doctor," Jimin slowly looked at the doctor. "Why are you afraid?" The doctor went silent. The room seemed to shrink around them. The monitor beside Jimin continued its steady rhythm, beep after beep, each sound painfully loud in the silence. Finally, the doctor placed the paper on the counter. "Because this is not the first message." Jungkook felt something cold move through his stomach. "How many?" 3, Jimin's lips parted. 3, the first arrived 2 days before you were admitted, the doctor said. The second came yesterday morning, the third was delivered tonight. Jungkook looked at Jimin. "What did they say?" The doctor hesitated. "The first said he will come looking for you. The second said do not tell him the truth." Jimin's face lost what little color remained in it. Jungkook stared at the doctor. "You listened. I was trying to protect my patient. By lying to me," Jungkook's voice rose, "by telling me Jimin didn't want me here." The doctor looked down. "I was instructed not to let anyone outside the authorized family circle enter the ward." "Who instructed you?" "The hospital administration." "Which person?" "I cannot tell you." Jungkook took 1 step forward. "Then I will find out myself." Jimin tightened his grip on Jungkook's hand. "No." Jungkook looked back at him. "Jimin, no, Jungkook." Jimin's eyes were wet. "You came here because you were worried about me. I don't want you getting hurt because of me." Jungkook sat beside the bed. "You don't get to decide that for me." Jimin looked away. "You always say things like that. Because they're true. And what happens when you can't protect me?" Jungkook became silent. Jimin had asked the question quietly, but it struck him harder than anger could have. Jungkook had always believed that if he cared enough, stayed close enough, watched carefully enough, he could prevent bad things from happening. But the world had never obeyed that logic. He had learned that lesson years ago when he watched someone he loved disappear from his life without being able to stop it. Since then, Jungkook had developed a habit of counting things whenever he was anxious. 3 steps from the door to the bed. 4 breaths before speaking. 5 seconds of silence before answering a difficult question. It was a strange ritual, one Jimin had once teased him about. Now Jungkook silently counted 5 breaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then he looked at Jimin. "I don't know if I can protect you from everything," Jungkook admitted. "But I know I won't leave you alone." Jimin's expression softened. "Even when I tell you to." "Especially then." A tiny smile appeared on Jimin's lips. It was the first real smile Jungkook had seen since entering the room. "You're impossible. You knew that already." "I did." For a moment the fear disappeared. They were simply Jungkook and Jimin again, 2 people sitting close enough to remember what normal life felt like. Then the doctor cleared his throat. "There is something else." Jungkook looked at him. "What?" Jimin wasn't brought here because of the accident alone. Jimin's smile vanished. "What do you mean?" The doctor walked to the medical chart and opened it. "Your injuries were real, the fall was real, but there was another factor." Jungkook's eyes narrowed. "Someone tampered with his medication before he arrived." Jimin stared at the doctor. "What?" "The toxicology report showed traces of a sedative that wasn't prescribed to you." Jungkook stood immediately. Someone drugged him. We cannot say that with certainty. Then what can you say? That someone gave Jimin a substance that could have caused severe complications. Jimin looked down at his hands. His fingers began trembling. Jungkook noticed immediately. Jimin, I remember something. Jungkook moved closer. What? Jimin closed his eyes. Before the accident, I was walking through the parking garage. His breathing became shallow. I heard footsteps behind me. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Did you see anyone? No, I turned around, but nobody was there. Then what? Someone called my name. Jimin swallowed. Not loudly, just enough for me to hear. Whose voice? I don't know, male or female. Male. Jimin opened his eyes, but there was something strange. What? He knew your name. Jungkook stopped breathing for a second. My name, Jimin nodded. He said Jungkook is already on his way. The doctor looked toward the closed door. Jungkook felt a chill spread across his shoulders. You never told me that, because I thought I imagined it. Why? Because after that everything became blurry. Jimin touched his temple. I remember falling, then waking up here. Jungkook looked at the doctor. Does security footage show anything? The cameras in the parking garage were disabled that night. Convenient. The doctor said nothing. Jungkook walked toward the window. The city beyond the glass was covered in rain, streetlights reflecting on wet pavement like broken pieces of gold. Somewhere outside, cars moved through the darkness, unaware that inside this hospital room, a simple visit had turned into something far more dangerous. I need to see the footage, Jungkook said. You can't. Then take me to someone who can. Jungkook, Jimin whispered. He turned. Stay. One word, nothing dramatic, nothing complicated. But Jungkook understood what Jimin meant. Don't disappear again. Don't leave me alone with this fear. Jungkook returned to the chair beside him. I'm staying. Jimin slowly relaxed against the pillow. The doctor watched them for a moment before speaking. There is one person who may know what happened. Jungkook looked up. Who? The night nurse who was assigned to Jimin before the accident. Where is she? The doctor hesitated. She resigned this morning. Jungkook's expression hardened. Why? She said she was frightened. Frightened of what? She told me someone had been asking questions about Jimin. Jimin closed his eyes. Who? The doctor looked directly at Jungkook. She said the person introduced himself as your friend. Jungkook went completely still. I don't have anyone working at this hospital. The doctor nodded slowly. That's what makes it disturbing. Jimin opened his eyes again. Jungkook, yes, if someone is using your name to get close to me, his voice trembled, then maybe this was never about me. Jungkook stared at Jimin, and suddenly the pieces began shifting inside his mind. The mysterious messages, the false information, the altered records, the missing nurse, the disabled cameras, and the stranger who knew his name before Jimin's accident. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand again. Whatever this is, we'll find out together. Jimin squeezed his fingers. Promise. Jungkook looked into Jimin's eyes. Promise. The doctor quietly stepped away from the bed and closed the medical chart. For the first time that night, nobody spoke. The rain continued against the glass, soft and relentless. Jungkook remained beside Jimin until his breathing became calm. Jimin eventually fell asleep with his hand still holding Jungkook's. Jungkook didn't move. He watched Jimin sleep and realized how exhausted he truly was. Beneath the hospital blanket, Jimin looked smaller than Jungkook remembered, fragile in a way that frightened him. Jungkook gently adjusted the blanket around Jimin's shoulders, then he looked at the doctor. Tomorrow morning we're going to find that nurse. The doctor nodded, and Jungkook, yes, you should probably stop pretending to be a nurse. For the first time that night, Jungkook almost laughed. I suppose the disguise didn't work very well. The doctor glanced at the discarded glasses and blue cap. You fooled everyone except the people who mattered. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Maybe that's enough. Jimin remained asleep, but the corner of his mouth lifted faintly, as if somewhere inside his dreams he had heard him. At 5:17 in the morning, Jimin woke to the sound of someone whispering his name from the other side of the hospital door, and Jungkook immediately knew that whoever was standing outside had not come to check on a patient. Jimin's eyes opened slowly, still heavy with sleep, and the first thing he saw was Jungkook sitting beside his bed with his head tilted against the wall, asleep in an uncomfortable chair. Jungkook's disguise was gone. His cap lay on the floor, his glasses rested beside the medical chart, and the blue nurse's uniform had been replaced by a dark jacket the doctor had secretly given him. For several seconds, Jimin simply watched Jungkook breathe. Jungkook looked exhausted. There were faint shadows beneath his eyes, and one hand remained loosely wrapped around Jimin's fingers even while he slept. Jimin smiled faintly. Then the whisper came again. Jimin. His smile disappeared. Jimin turned toward the door. Jimin, are you awake? The voice was soft. Too soft. Jimin's heart began beating faster. He recognized the voice. It was the same voice from the parking garage. Jimin slowly pulled his hand away from Jungkook's. The movement woke him. Jungkook's eyes opened instantly. What happened? Jimin raised one trembling finger toward the door. That's him. Jungkook stood so quickly that the chair scraped against the floor. Who's? The voice. Jungkook stared at the door. Another whisper followed. Jimin opened the door. Jungkook stepped between Jimin and the entrance. Don't move. Jimin swallowed. Jungkook, stay behind me. The doctor's office door opened suddenly. The doctor rushed inside. What happened? Jungkook pointed toward the hallway. Someone is outside. The doctor froze. What did they say? They called Jimin's name. The doctor immediately locked the door. Jimin watched the doctor's expression change. Again, that same fear. That same silent recognition. Jungkook noticed it too. You know who it is. The doctor didn't answer. Doctor, I don't know. Don't lie to me. I said I don't know. Jungkook stepped closer. You recognized the voice. The doctor looked at Jimin. Then at Jungkook. Then finally toward the door. I've heard that voice before. Jimin's breathing became shallow. Where's? The doctor hesitated. 3 nights ago. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. Why didn't you tell us? Because I wasn't sure. Sure about what? The doctor lowered his voice. That someone inside this hospital was helping whoever is behind this. The room became silent. Jimin's fingers curled around the blanket. Someone inside the hospital. The doctor nodded. I found irregularities in your medical records. Your admission time was changed. Your medication schedule was altered. Someone accessed your file without authorization. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Who's? I don't know. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Jungkook stared at him. The doctor's voice became quieter. But I know one thing. What? The person who accessed Jimin's file used your identification. Jungkook went still. My identification? Yes. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Why would someone use your name? Jungkook had no answer. The question had haunted him since the previous night. Maybe this wasn't about Jimin. Maybe someone wanted to use Jimin to reach him. But why? Jungkook looked down at his hands. For years he had avoided talking about the darkest period of his life. There were things he had never told Jimin. Things he had buried so deeply that sometimes he wondered whether they had ever happened at all. A name, a place, a promise, and a night he had spent running. Jimin noticed the change in his expression. Jungkook. Jungkook didn't answer. Jungkook, what are you remembering? He slowly looked at Jimin. Nothing. Jimin frowned. You're lying again. I said it's nothing. Jungkook. Jimin, please. The desperation in his voice silenced Jimin. The doctor watched them carefully. Then he said something that made Jungkook's blood turn cold. Maybe it isn't nothing. Jungkook looked at him. What do you mean? The doctor walked toward a locked cabinet. I found something in your file. Jungkook stared. My file? No. The doctor opened the cabinet. Jimin's file. He removed a thin brown folder. There was no hospital logo on it. No patient number. No official identification. Only one word had been written across the front. Jungkook. Jimin stared at it. Why does my file have his name on it? The doctor placed it on the table. I don't know. Jungkook didn't touch it. Something inside him told him not to. The doctor opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Not medical photographs. Personal photographs. Jungkook recognized the first one immediately. It was him and Jimin standing outside a cafe months earlier. Neither of them had known anyone was watching. The second showed Jimin walking alone through a train station. The third showed Jungkook entering his apartment. The fourth showed Jimin sleeping in a car. Jimin's face went pale. Who took these? The doctor turned another page. There were dozens. Jungkook and Jimin at restaurants. Jungkook and Jimin leaving studios. Jimin walking home. Jungkook waiting outside buildings. Every photograph had a date. Every photograph had a time. Every photograph had a location. Jimin stared at them in horror. They've been following us. Jungkook remained silent. His eyes moved across the photographs. Then he saw something. A picture taken 8 months earlier. Jimin was standing beside Jungkook. Behind them, reflected in a dark shop window, was a man. Jungkook leaned closer. He knew that face. He had seen it before. Not recently. Years ago. Jungkook's breathing stopped. Nose. Jimin looked at him. What? Jungkook pointed at the photographs. That man. The doctor leaned closer. Do you know him? Jungkook's fingers trembled. Yes. Jimin stared at Jungkook. Who is he? Jungkook couldn't answer. The memory came back violently. A hallway. Rain against a window. A suitcase. A younger Jungkook standing outside a locked apartment. And a man telling him, if you ever come back, I'll make sure you regret it. Jungkook closed his eyes. Jimin reached for his hand. Jungkook. I thought he was gone. Who's? My brother. Jimin froze. The doctor looked at Jungkook in surprise. You never mentioned having a brother. Jungkook opened his eyes. I don't. Jimin's eyebrows furrowed. Then who is he? Jungkook looked again at the photograph. His voice dropped to a whisper. He was my brother's best friend. The doctor stared at him. What happened to your brother? Jungkook's face hardened. He disappeared. When? 7 years ago. Jimin's fingers tightened around his. Did you think he was dead? Jungkook looked away. I was told he was. The doctor slowly closed the folder. By whom? Jungkook didn't answer. Jimin whispered Jungkook. Jungkook finally looked at him. There are things I never told you. Jimin's eyes filled with sadness. Why? Because I wanted you to know me as I am now. And not who you were. Jungkook nodded. Jimin looked down. You thought I'd leave if I knew. I thought you'd look at me differently. Jimin's voice trembled. Jungkook, I already know you're afraid. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. I was terrified you'd discover why. Jimin slowly reached toward his face. Jungkook leaned into the touch. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the hospital's emergency alarm suddenly sounded. Red lights flashed through the hallway. The doctor turned toward the door. What is happening? A nurse shouted from the corridor. Room 417. Jungkook looked at Jimin. That's this room. The doctor rushed toward the control panel. The monitor beside Jimin suddenly went dark. Then another screen flickered on. A security camera feed appeared. The hospital corridor. The elevator. The parking garage. Then a final image. A man standing directly outside the hospital. He was looking straight into the security camera. Jungkook stepped closer. His face drained of color. The man smiled. Then he raised one hand. In his fingers was a photograph of Jungkook and Jimin. Jimin stared at the screen. That's him. Jungkook's voice was barely audible. He found us. The screen suddenly went black. And from the hallway came the sound of footsteps approaching their door. The footsteps stopped directly outside Jimin's room, and Jungkook instinctively moved closer to the bed as the door handle slowly began to turn. Jungkook, Jimin whispered, "Don't let him take you away." Jungkook looked at Jimin, then at the locked door. "I won't." The doctor grabbed the emergency phone. No one enters this room until security arrives. A soft knock came from the other side. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. Jimin's breathing became uneven. Jungkook recognized the rhythm. He had heard it before. 7 years ago. A knock on an apartment door at midnight. 3 times. Always 3 times. Jungkook's face went pale. The doctor noticed. "You know that knock?" Jungkook nodded. "It's him." Another 3 knocks. Then silence. Jungkook whispered, "His name is Daniel." Jimin looked at him. "Daniel? He was my brother's closest friend." The doctor stared at Jungkook. "What happened 7 years ago?" Jungkook didn't answer immediately. His memories came back in fragments. Rain. Broken glass. His brother's voice shouting his name. Daniel standing in the doorway. A suitcase on the floor. And blood on Jungkook's sleeve. "I was 19, Jungkook finally said. "My brother had discovered something he wasn't supposed to know." "What?" Jungkook swallowed. "I never found out." Jimin watched him carefully. "You said he disappeared." "He disappeared after that night." "And Daniel?" "He vanished too." The doctor lowered the phone. "So why is he here now?" Jungkook stared at the door. "I don't know." A voice came from the hallway. "You do know, Jungkook." Jimin's eyes widened. "Daniel." His voice was calm. Almost gentle. "Open the door." Jungkook stepped forward. "Stay away from Jimin." Daniel laughed softly. "I didn't come for Jimin." Jungkook froze. "Then why are you here?" "You." The doctor looked at Jungkook. Jimin tightened his grip around the blanket. Daniel continued. "You spent 7 years pretending you forgot." Jungkook's breathing became heavier. "I didn't forget anything." "You forgot the promise." "What promise?" "The one you made to your brother." Jungkook closed his eyes. He remembered. A younger version of himself standing in the rain. His brother holding his shoulders. "If anything happens to me, don't trust anyone." Jungkook opened his eyes. Daniel continued speaking through the door. "You broke that promise." Jungkook stepped closer. "My brother is dead." "No." The single word destroyed the room's silence. Jimin stared at Jungkook. The doctor looked toward the door. Daniel whispered, "Your brother is alive." Jungkook stopped breathing. "No. You've been searching for the wrong person." Jungkook's hand trembled. "Where is he?" Daniel didn't answer. "Where is my brother?" A long silence followed. Then Daniel said, "Ask the doctor." Jungkook slowly turned around. The doctor was standing completely still. Jimin looked at him. "Doctor." The doctor's face had changed. He looked trapped. Jungkook's voice became cold. What do you know? The doctor looked away. Jungkook, what do you know? I can't tell you. You can. I promised. Promised who? The doctor said nothing. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. Was it my brother? The doctor's silence answered for him. Jimin stared at Jungkook. Your brother is alive. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. For 7 years he had mourned someone he thought was dead. 7 birthdays. 7 New Year's mornings. 7 years of wondering whether he could have done something differently. And now someone was telling him that his brother might still be alive. The door suddenly opened. A security guard entered. Doctor, step away from the patient. Jungkook turned. The guard raised his weapon. Hands where I can see them. Jimin's eyes widened. That's not security. The guard looked at Jimin. Jimin whispered. His badge is wrong. Jungkook immediately grabbed the metal tray and threw it toward the light. The room went dark. The guard shouted. Jungkook moved. He slammed the man's arm against the wall. The weapon fell. The doctor pulled Jimin's bed away from the door. Jimin screamed as pain shot through his injured side. Jimin. Jungkook turned. The fake security guard lunged toward Jimin. Jungkook tackled him. They crashed into the wall. The man's elbow struck Jungkook's ribs. Jungkook grunted but refused to let go. You're not touching him. The man struggled. You don't understand. I understand enough. The doctor pressed the emergency alarm. Sirens erupted throughout the floor. Real security guards rushed into the corridor. The attacker shoved Jungkook away and ran. Jungkook chased him. Jungkook, Jimin shouted. Jungkook stopped for half a second. Then he looked back. Jimin was staring at him with tears in his eyes. Come back. Those 2 words stopped him. Jungkook turned away from the fleeing man. He returned to Jimin. The real security team caught the attacker near the elevator. The hallway became chaos. People shouted. Doors opened. Medical carts rolled past. But Jungkook saw none of it. He saw only Jimin. Jimin reached for him. Jungkook took his hand. I'm here. Jimin's eyes filled with tears. You came back. I promised. The doctor stood nearby, pale and shaken. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen. His expression changed. Jungkook noticed. Who is it? The doctor didn't answer. Doctor. He slowly turned the phone toward Jungkook. There was a message. Only 1 sentence. Tell Jungkook the truth before his brother reaches the hospital. Jungkook stared at the screen. His heart pounded. Then another message appeared. This time there was a photograph attached. Jungkook looked at it. His entire body went rigid. It showed a man sitting inside a dark room. Older, thinner, but unmistakably familiar. Jungkook's brother. Alive. And sitting beside him was Daniel. Jimin looked at the photograph. Jungkook. Jungkook couldn't speak. Then his brother slowly raised his eyes toward the camera, as if he knew Jungkook was watching. And beneath the photograph was a final message. He has been waiting 7 years to tell you why he disappeared. Jungkook stared at the photograph for so long that the hospital corridor seemed to disappear around him. His brother was alive. After 7 years of grief, anger, unanswered questions, and sleepless nights, the impossible truth was sitting inside a small rectangle on the doctor's phone. Jungkook's lips moved, but no sound came out. Jimin watched him carefully. Jungkook. Jungkook finally whispered, "That's him." The doctor lowered the phone. I know. Jungkook looked at him sharply. You knew. The doctor closed his eyes. I knew he was alive. Jungkook's expression hardened. For how long? The doctor hesitated. For 3 years. Jungkook stepped toward him. 3 years. His voice was quiet, which somehow made it more frightening. You knew my brother was alive for 3 years, and you never told me. I was instructed not to. By whom? The doctor looked toward Jimin. By your brother. Jungkook froze. Jimin slowly sat straighter despite the pain. Why would he tell you to keep that secret? The doctor sighed. Because he believed that if Jungkook found him, the people who were searching for him would find Jungkook too. Jungkook shook his head. That doesn't make sense. It does if you know what happened 7 years ago. Jungkook's hands curled into fists. Then tell me. The doctor looked at him for a long moment. Your brother discovered a financial network operating through several private medical facilities. Patient identities were being altered. Medical records were being moved. People were disappearing from official systems. Jimin's eyes widened. And this hospital, the doctor nodded, was one of the places involved. Jungkook felt sick. You mean people were using patients? Yes. For what? Identity transfers, fraud, illegal clinical trials, black market medical records. Jimin's face became pale. The doctor continued. Your brother found evidence. He copied it. Before he could take it to the authorities, someone discovered what he had done. Jungkook remembered that night. The rain. His brother's frightened eyes. The suitcase. The shouting. And Daniel standing outside. I thought Daniel betrayed him, Jungkook whispered. The doctor shook his head. Daniel saved him. Jungkook looked at him. What? Daniel helped your brother disappear. Jungkook's eyes filled with confusion. Then why did Daniel threaten me? Because he believed you were being watched. Jimin slowly reached for Jungkook's hand. Jungkook took it. The doctor looked down. Your brother made one mistake. What? He trusted the wrong person inside the hospital. Jungkook's expression changed. Whose? The doctor didn't answer. Jungkook stared at him. Was it you? The doctor flinched. No. Then whose? The doctor looked toward the corridor. The former hospital director. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. Where is he? Dead. When? 2 years ago. Jungkook frowned. Then why are we still being followed? The doctor took a slow breath. Because the organization didn't die with him. Jimin looked at Jungkook. They're still operating. Yes. And they want Jimin. The doctor shook his head. They want something Jimin accidentally received. Jungkook immediately looked at Jimin. What? Jimin looked confused. I don't know. The doctor walked to Jimin's bedside. When you were admitted, we found something hidden inside your jacket. Jimin frowned. My jacket? Yes. What was it? The doctor reached into a locked drawer and removed a small transparent evidence bag. Inside was a tiny silver memory card. Jungkook stared at it. What is that? The reason people have been watching Jimin. Jimin looked at the memory card. I've never seen that before. I believe you. Jungkook carefully examined it. What's on it? We don't know. Why not? It's encrypted. Then decrypt it. We tried. And every attempt triggered a security lock. Jungkook looked at the doctor. How many attempts? 2. And the third. The doctor shook his head. We were afraid the card would destroy itself. Jungkook looked back at Jimin. Someone put this inside your jacket. Jimin slowly remembered. The night of the accident. What? I met someone. Jungkook immediately focused on him. Who? I don't know. What did they look like? Jimin closed his eyes. I remember a grey coat. Anything else? A silver ring. Which hand? Right. Any symbol? Jimin's face suddenly changed. Yes. What? A small black line across the ring. The doctor went completely still. Jungkook noticed. You know that symbol? The doctor nodded slowly. It belonged to the organization. Jimin's breathing quickened. So they gave me the memory card. Most likely. Why? The doctor looked at Jungkook. Because they knew Jimin was close to you. Jungkook understood. The realization made his stomach twist. Jimin hadn't been randomly targeted. Jimin had been used as bait. Someone had expected Jungkook to come looking for him. And Jungkook had walked directly into their trap. Jimin noticed the change in Jungkook's expression. Don't blame yourself. I should. No. I disguised myself as a nurse. You came because you were worried. I entered a restricted ward. Because you thought I needed you. But I put you in more danger. Jimin reached up and touched Jungkook's cheek. Jungkook. Jungkook looked at him. You didn't create this. Jimin's voice softened. You just refused to leave me alone. Jungkook's eyes became wet. I was so scared. I know. I thought you hated me. I never hated you. I thought you wanted me gone. I wanted you to come. Jungkook closed his eyes. Jimin gently wiped away the tear that escaped. I waited every night. For me. For you. Jungkook leaned forward until his forehead rested against Jimin's. For several seconds neither spoke. The hospital noise continued around them, but inside that small space everything became quiet. Then Jimin whispered, I'm sorry. Jungkook shook his head. No. I should have told you how scared I was. You were trying to protect me. And you were trying to protect me. Jungkook smiled sadly. We are both terrible at this. Jimin laughed softly. It was a weak laugh, but it was real. The doctor watched them with a faint smile before returning his attention to the memory card. There is one more thing. Jungkook looked up. What? Your brother asked me to give this to you if he ever knew you had found him. The doctor reached into the same drawer. This time he removed an envelope. Jungkook stared at it. His name was written across the front. Not printed. Handwritten. The handwriting was unmistakable. Jungkook's brother. His fingers trembled as he took the envelope. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Jungkook read the first line. Jungkook, if you're reading this, then I failed to keep you away from the truth. Jungkook stopped. Jimin watched silently. Jungkook continued. I disappeared because I believed distance would keep you alive. I was wrong. They never stopped watching you. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to come home many times. Every birthday, every holiday, every time I heard your name. But I knew that if I returned, they would follow me to you. Jungkook's breathing became unsteady. Daniel stayed because someone had to watch over you without letting you know. Jungkook looked at the doctor. Daniel had never been hunting him. He had been protecting him. The letter continued. The person who betrayed me is still alive. Jungkook's eyes stopped moving. His heart began pounding. Then he read the final paragraphs. You already know this person. Jungkook lowered the letter. Jimin saw his expression. What's wrong? Jungkook couldn't answer. The doctor stepped closer. What did it say? Jungkook looked at him. Someone we know betrayed my brother. Who? Jungkook slowly shook his head. I don't know. The doctor looked confused. You just said. I know what the letter says. Jungkook folded it carefully. But my brother didn't write the name. Why? Because he wanted me to figure it out myself. Jimin frowned. From what? Jungkook looked down at the memory card. The evidence. The doctor nodded. We need to decrypt it. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Then that's what we'll do. Jimin gave him a tired smile. Together. Together. The doctor placed the memory card into a secure device. The screen lit up. A password field appeared. Jungkook stared at it. The doctor asked, Do you know the password? Jungkook shook his head. No. Jimin looked at the screen. Maybe it's something only my brother would know. Jungkook thought for several seconds. Then he remembered something. A childhood habit. Whenever his brother was afraid, he used to tap his fingers against a table. 3 times. Pause. 3 times. It had been their secret signal. Jungkook entered the numbers. The screen changed. Access granted. Jungkook and Jimin stared at each other. A folder opened. Inside were dozens of files. Medical records. Names. Dates. Photographs. Payments. Hospital documents. And one video file. Jungkook clicked it. The screen filled with darkness. Then a familiar voice spoke. Jungkook's brother. If you're watching this, Jungkook, I need you to listen carefully. Jungkook stopped breathing. His brother's voice continued. Do not trust the doctor. Jungkook slowly turned toward the doctor. The doctor stared at the screen in disbelief. Jimin's hand tightened around Jungkook's. Then the video continued. He isn't the person you think he is. The doctor took one step backward. Jungkook stood. Doctor. The doctor's eyes filled with tears. I can explain. Jungkook's voice became cold. Then explain why my brother told me not to trust you. Because I was the one who helped him disappear. The doctor's confession landed in the room with a weight that seemed to silence even the machines. Jungkook stared at him. Jimin stared at him. On the monitor, Jungkook's brother remained frozen in the final frame, his face tense and exhausted. Jungkook slowly stepped away from the screen. You helped him disappear. Yes. Then why did he tell me not to trust you? The doctor lowered his eyes. Because he didn't know whether I was still protecting him. Jungkook's jaw tightened. That doesn't answer my question. The doctor looked toward Jimin. Your brother was right to be suspicious. Jimin's expression hardened. Why? Because I made a mistake. What mistake? I gave someone access to the hospital database. Jungkook's blood ran cold. Who? The doctor hesitated. Daniel. Jungkook stared at him. Daniel. Yes. But you said Daniel was protecting my brother. He was. Then why did you give him access? Because your brother needed medical records erased. Jungkook shook his head. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect you to believe anything. The doctor walked toward the window. I expect you to understand that 7 years ago, your brother wasn't running away from the police. He turned around. He was running from people who could make someone disappear without leaving a trace. Jimin's eyes lowered. And now they're after us. Yes. Jungkook looked at the memory card. What is on this? Everything your brother discovered. Then why didn't you give it to the authorities? The doctor's face tightened. Because some of the authorities were involved. Silence. Jimin slowly whispered, how deep does this go? The doctor looked at him. Deeper than either of you understands. Jungkook stepped closer. Then tell us everything. The doctor took a long breath. Your brother discovered that several hospitals were exchanging patient data through a private network. Some patients were assigned false identities, some medical histories were altered, some people disappeared after being admitted. Jimin's face went pale. And my records. They were accessed because someone believed you had information. I don't. I know. Jungkook looked at the doctor. Then why target Jimin? The doctor pointed at the memory card. Because they believed Jimin had the key. The key to what? Your brother's evidence. Jungkook looked at Jimin. What evidence? The doctor shook his head. Not all of it is on that card. Jungkook's expression changed. There is more. Yes. Where's? The doctor didn't answer. Jungkook grabbed the front of his coat. Where's? Jimin immediately said Jungkook. Jungkook released him. The doctor adjusted his collar. Your brother hid the original evidence somewhere only you could find. Me? Yes. Why me? Because he knew you would never stop looking for him. Jungkook stared at him. A memory suddenly surfaced. A small wooden box. His brother had given it to him when they were children. Inside was a broken watch. Jungkook had forgotten about it years ago. The doctor watched his face. You remember? Jungkook nodded slowly. The watch. What watch? Jimin asked. My brother gave me an old watch when I was 14. Where is it? Jungkook shook his head. I don't know. The doctor stepped closer. That's where the evidence is. Jungkook looked at him. What? The watch. Jimin's eyes widened. The evidence is inside the watch. Not inside. The doctor pointed at the memory card. Underneath the watch's back plate. Jungkook's heart began racing. He remembered the watch. He had kept it for years. Then, after his brother disappeared, he had packed it into a box and stored it away. But where? Jungkook closed his eyes. His old apartment. The storage room. A wooden cabinet. The third drawer. He suddenly opened his eyes. I know where it is. Jimin smiled faintly. Then we can get it. The doctor shook his head. No. Jungkook looked at him. Why? Because someone is waiting for you to leave this hospital. Jungkook glanced toward the door. The security team was still outside. Then we'll stay. You don't understand. The doctor lowered his voice. They know you're here. Jungkook's eyes hardened. They already know. Knows. The doctor looked at Jimin. They know something else. What? They know Jimin is awake. Jimin's expression changed. Why does that matter? Because they expected you to remain unconscious for another 24 hours. Jungkook's stomach tightened. What did they plan to do? The doctor didn't answer. Jimin whispered, Doctor. The doctor looked at him. They planned to transfer you. To where? A private facility. Jungkook stepped forward. Without my permission. Without anyone's permission. Then we are not letting that happen. The doctor nodded. That's why you need to leave tonight. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Jimin looked frightened. I can't walk far. You don't have to. The doctor pulled a wheelchair from beside the wall. There is an underground service corridor beneath this floor. Jungkook immediately understood. We can get out through there. Yes. The doctor checked the hallway. But once you leave, you cannot return. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Are you sure? Jungkook knelt beside him. I came here disguised as a nurse. Jimin smiled despite everything. And now I'm taking you out as yourself. Jimin's eyes became wet. Jungkook, I promised. The doctor helped Jimin into the wheelchair. Jungkook grabbed the handles. They moved into the hallway. Every sound seemed amplified. The wheels, the ventilation system, their breathing, the distant alarms. Jungkook kept looking over his shoulder. They reached the service elevator. The doctor entered a code. The doors opened. Inside was darkness. Jimin held Jungkook's hand. Don't let go. I won't. The elevator descended. 1 floor. 2. 3. Then stopped. Jungkook looked at the doctor. This isn't the underground level. The doctor frowned. I didn't stop it. The lights went out. Jimin gasped. A voice came through the elevator speaker. Good evening, Jungkook. Jungkook froze. Daniel. The voice continued. You finally found the truth. Jungkook stepped in front of Jimin. Where are you? Closer than you think. The elevator lights returned. The doors opened. But instead of the underground corridor, they opened into a dark hospital room. There was a chair in the center. Someone was sitting in it. Jungkook's heart stopped. His brother. Alive. Older. Tired. But unmistakably him. Jimin covered his mouth. Jungkook couldn't move. His brother slowly stood. Hello, Jungkook. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. You're alive. His brother nodded. I am. Why? Because I couldn't come home. Jungkook took 1 step forward. You let me believe you were dead. I had no choice. You always had a choice. His brother's expression broke. You're right. Jungkook's voice trembled. Then why did you leave me? His brother looked at Jimin. Because if I had stayed, Jimin would never have survived. Jungkook turned. What does Jimin have to do with this? His brother didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the doctor. Tell him. The doctor lowered his head. Jungkook felt his heart sink. Tell me what? His brother looked directly at him. Jimin wasn't chosen randomly. Jungkook's fingers tightened around the wheelchair. He was connected to me long before you ever met him. Jimin stared at him. What? Jungkook's brother stepped closer. You have something I need. Jimin's expression changed. What? His brother pointed toward Jimin's chest. Your memories. Jimin froze. The doctor whispered, That's impossible. But Jungkook's brother shook his head. No. He looked at Jimin. It's already coming back. Jimin's face suddenly tightened with pain. He grabbed his head. Jimin. Jungkook rushed toward him. Images flashed through Jimin's mind. A dark hallway. A silver ring. A locked room. A young man standing behind glass. And a voice whispering his name. Jimin opened his eyes. His breathing became frantic. I remember. Jungkook held him. What do you remember? Jimin stared at Jungkook's brother. Then he whispered 4 words. I've seen him before. The room fell silent. Jungkook looked at his brother. His brother looked at Jimin. And for the first time, genuine fear appeared in his eyes. I've seen him before. Jimin's words seemed to freeze the air inside the darkroom. Jungkook stared at his brother. His brother stared back at Jimin. For several seconds nobody moved. Then Jimin slowly touched his temple. I remember a room. Jungkook immediately knelt beside him. What room? It was white. Like this hospital. No. Jimin shook his head. Older, colder, there was a window but it was too high to reach. His breathing became uneven. And there was a man standing behind the glass. Jungkook looked at his brother. Was it him? Jimin nodded. Yes. Jungkook's brother closed his eyes. Jimin continued. He wasn't alone. Who else was there? A woman. What did she look like? I don't know, I couldn't see her face. Jimin pressed his fingers against his forehead. But I remember what she said. What? She said, don't let Jungkook know. Jungkook went completely still. His brother looked away. Jungkook slowly stood. You knew? His brother didn't answer. You knew Jimin had been there. I suspected. No. Jungkook's voice cracked. You knew? His brother looked at him. Yes. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I was trying to protect you. Everyone keeps saying that. Jungkook laughed bitterly. Everyone keeps protecting me by lying to me. His brother stepped closer. I was afraid. Jungkook stared at him. You? Yes. The older man's voice trembled. I was afraid that if I came home they would find you. Who? The people who destroyed everything. Jimin looked between them. What happened to me? Jungkook's brother took a slow breath. You were a witness. Jimin's eyes widened. To what? To the night I disappeared. Jimin's face went pale. I was there. Yes. But I don't remember. You were young. Jimin looked confused. I don't understand. You were leaving a building with someone that night. You saw me arguing with Daniel. You saw the woman who betrayed us. You saw where the evidence was hidden. Jimin shook his head. No. You forgot because they made sure you would. The doctor's expression became grim. The medication. Jungkook turned toward him. You mean the sedative? Yes. They deliberately erased his memory. Not completely. They wanted fragments to remain because they believed fear would keep him silent. Jimin's eyes filled with tears. That explains the dreams. Jungkook looked at him. What dreams? The same room. Jimin's voice became fragile. I've dreamed about it for years. Jungkook's heart broke. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought it was just a nightmare. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand. You don't have to remember everything tonight. Jimin squeezed his fingers. But I want to. His voice became stronger. I want my life back. Jungkook looked at him with quiet determination. You will. His brother nodded. That is why I brought you here. Jungkook looked at him. Why now? Because the organization knows I am alive. The doctor looked toward the hallway. And because they have lost control of the hospital. Jungkook frowned. What? The doctor explained that the hospital director had secretly maintained the network after the original organization fractured. Several employees had been involved, but the system had begun collapsing after evidence was leaked. Jimin's hospitalization had been an attempt to recover the final piece of information they needed. The memory card, Jimin whispered. His brother nodded. Yes. But you already had the evidence. Not all of it. He looked at Jimin. You were carrying the final key. Jimin touched his chest. What keys? Your memories. Jimin closed his eyes. Slowly, another memory surfaced. A small metal box. A woman's trembling hands. A young Jungkook standing outside a door. And a voice saying, "If he ever comes back, give this to him." Jimin opened his eyes. "I remember the box." Jungkook's heart raced. "What box?" "I don't know where it is." His brother smiled faintly. "You don't need to." He reached into his coat and removed a photograph. It showed a small apartment. Jungkook recognized it immediately. "My old home. The box is there." Jungkook stared at the photograph. "I've searched that place 100 times." "You searched for objects." His brother pointed toward the photograph. "You never searched for what wasn't supposed to be seen." The doctor looked at the image. Behind the walls. Jungkook suddenly understood. The old apartment had a loose section behind the bookshelf. He remembered fixing it when he was younger. "I know." Jimin smiled weakly. "Then let's finish this." They left the hospital before sunrise. The rain had stopped. The streets were almost empty. Jungkook pushed Jimin's wheelchair through the service entrance, while his brother and the doctor followed several steps behind. For the first time in 7 years, Jungkook walked beside his brother. It felt strange, familiar, painful, beautiful. Jungkook kept looking at him. His brother noticed. "You can ask. Why did you never call?" "I did." Jungkook stopped. "What?" "I called you every birthday. I never received anything." "I know." His brother looked down. Someone intercepted the calls. Jungkook's eyes became wet. "All those years. I listened to your messages." Jungkook's voice broke. "I left hundreds. I heard them. Then you knew I never stopped waiting." "Yes." Jungkook looked away. His brother gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry." Jungkook didn't respond. Then he stepped forward and hugged him. The embrace was awkward at first. 7 years of distance stood between them. Then Jungkook's brother held him tightly. Jungkook closed his eyes. For the first time in 7 years, the ache inside his chest softened. Jimin watched them quietly. A smile appeared on his face. When they reached the apartment, Jungkook unlocked the door. Dust covered everything. Old books. A broken lamp. A framed photograph. Memories. Jungkook walked directly toward the bookshelf. He moved it aside. Behind it was a narrow section of wall. He touched the surface. A hidden panel opened. Inside was a small metal box. Jungkook took it out. His hands shook. He opened it. Inside was the old watch, a USB drive, and a photograph of 4 people. Jungkook, his brother, Daniel, and Jimin. Jimin stared at the photograph. That was the night. Jungkook looked at him. "You remember?" Jimin nodded. "I remember everything." The room became silent. Jimin remembered the secret meeting. He remembered his brother's fear. He remembered Daniel protecting them. He remembered the woman who had betrayed them. And finally, he remembered the identity of the person behind the hospital network. Jimin slowly turned toward the doctor. It was the former director. The doctor nodded. "But he's dead." Jimin shook his head. "He was only the face." Jungkook's brother looked at him. Who was behind him? Jimin whispered the name. The doctor immediately closed his eyes. Jungkook looked shocked. It was someone they had trusted. Someone who had spent years pretending to help them. Someone who had secretly manipulated the hospital records. Someone who had arranged the accident. But the evidence was already on the USB drive. This time they had everything. Within weeks, the authorities received the complete files. The hospital network was dismantled. Those involved were arrested. The false records were restored. The people who had disappeared were finally identified. And the truth about Jungkook's brother became public. He had never betrayed Jungkook. He had sacrificed his own life to protect him. Jimin recovered slowly. His memories returned in fragments, but the nightmares eventually became less frequent. Jungkook remained beside him through every appointment. Sometimes they sat in silence. Sometimes they argued over small things. Sometimes Jimin complained that Jungkook worried too much. And sometimes Jungkook still counted his breaths whenever fear returned. One evening, months later, Jimin found Jungkook standing beside the hospital window. "You're counting again." Jungkook smiled. "Maybe." "How many?" "5. Jimin walked toward him. "Why?" "Because I'm grateful." "For what?" Jungkook looked at him. "For finding you." Jimin smiled. "You didn't just find me." "What did I do?" "You came back." Jungkook reached for his hand. "I told you I would." Jimin rested his head against Jungkook's shoulder. Outside, the city glowed beneath the evening sky. No disguises. No secrets. No locked doors. No mysterious messages. Just Jungkook and Jimin standing together. Jimin looked at him. "You know what I hated most about the hospital?" "What?" "You came disguised as a nurse." Jungkook laughed. "I was trying to see you. You looked terrible. I thought I looked convincing. You couldn't even carry the tray properly." Jungkook laughed harder. Jimin smiled. Then his expression softened. "But I'm glad you came." Jungkook looked at him. "Even though I broke every hospital rule." "Especially because you did." Jungkook gently squeezed his hand. Jimin smiled. And for the first time in years, neither of them was afraid of tomorrow. Because some stories begin with secrets. Some begin with fear. And some begin with a desperate man disguising himself as a nurse just to see the person he loves. But the most important stories are the ones where, after everything is taken away, two people still choose to find their way back to each other. 6 months after the hospital incident, Jimin thought the worst part of his life was finally behind him, until he found Jungkook standing alone in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, staring at an unopened envelope with an expression Jimin had never seen before. The apartment was silent, except for the refrigerator humming in the corner and rain tapping softly against the windows. Jimin stood barefoot in the doorway. "Jungkook." Jungkook didn't move. "Jungkook." He finally looked up. "Why are you awake?" Jimin glanced at the clock. "You're asking me that." Jungkook tried to smile. "It didn't work." Jimin walked closer. "What happened?" "Nothing." Jimin sighed. "You're terrible at lying." "I learned from you." Jimin stopped. "That was rude." Jungkook laughed quietly. For a second, everything felt normal. Then Jimin noticed the envelope. "What is that?" Jungkook looked down. "I found it in the mailbox." "Who sent it?" "I don't know." Jimin reached for it. Jungkook pulled it away. "Don't." Jimin frowned. "Why?" "Because it has your name on it." Jimin's expression changed. "Then let me see it." Jungkook hesitated. Finally, he handed it over. The envelope was plain. No return address. No stamp. Only 2 words written across the front. Jimin Park. Jimin's fingers trembled. "Open it." Jungkook nodded. Inside was a single photograph. Jimin looked at it. His face immediately went pale. It showed the hospital room where everything had begun. Jimin was asleep in the bed. Jungkook was sitting beside him. The photograph had been taken from the hallway. On the back was a handwritten message. "You thought it was over." Jimin stared at the words. Jungkook took the photographs. "We destroyed their network." Apparently not all of it. Jungkook walked to the window. The rain had become heavier. Jimin watched him. "Jungkook, are you afraid?" Jungkook remained silent. Then he nodded. "Yes." Jimin approached him. "Of what?" "Losing you again." Jimin placed his hand over Jungkook's. "You won't." "How can you be sure?" "Because this time I'm not alone." Jungkook turned toward him. Jimin smiled. "Neither are you." Jungkook looked at their hands. Then the apartment lights suddenly went out. Jimin froze. "Jungkook, stay here. Don't leave." "I won't." Jungkook reached for his phone. No signal. The darkness seemed unnatural. Then something clicked near the front door. A lock. Jungkook's body became rigid. Someone was outside. Jimin whispered, "Did you hear that?" "Yes." 3 knocks followed. Jungkook's face changed. 3 knocks. The same pattern. His brother's old signal. Jungkook slowly approached the door. Jimin followed. "Don't open it. I need to know." "Jungkook." He looked through the peephole. Nobody was there. He opened the door slightly. A small package sat on the floor. No one else was visible. Jungkook picked it up. Inside was an old cassette recorder. Jimin stared at it. "What is that?" "I don't know." Jungkook pressed the button. Static filled the room. Then a voice emerged. "His brother." "Jungkook, if you are hearing this, don't panic." Jungkook's breathing stopped. Jimin moved closer. The recording continued. "There is something I never told you." The voice crackled. The hospital wasn't the beginning. Jungkook stared at the recorder. It was only the final stage. Jimin looked at him. "Final stage of what?" The recording continued. "The organization began years before we discovered it." A pause. "And one of its first targets was not me." Jungkook's heart pounded. It was Jimin. Jimin's eyes widened. The recording stopped. Silence. Jungkook stared at Jimin. "No." Jimin shook his head. "That doesn't make sense. You were involved before we even met." "But how?" Jungkook didn't know. Then the recorder clicked again. Another message began. "This is the part I was afraid to tell you." Jungkook's brother's voice sounded weaker this time. Jimin wasn't chosen because of what he knew. A long pause. He was chosen because of who his family was. Jimin froze. "My family." Jungkook looked at him. The recording continued. "Your father knew about the organization." Jimin's eyes filled with confusion. "My father." He tried to expose them. Jimin took a step backward. "No." He disappeared because of it. Jimin's breathing became shallow. "My father didn't disappear." Jungkook stared at him. "What do you mean?" "My family told me he died." The recording continued. "That was a lie." Jimin covered his mouth. Jungkook immediately moved toward him. "Jimin." The recording stopped. Jimin looked at Jungkook. "If my father was alive, Jungkook held his shoulders. We'll find him. But why would everyone lie? Because someone wanted you to believe he was dead. Jimin's eyes filled with tears. Why? Jungkook didn't answer. The recorder clicked again. This time the voice was not Jungkook's brother. It was a woman. A voice Jimin recognized immediately. His breath caught. No. Jungkook looked at him. Who is it? Jimin stared at the recorder. My mother. The woman's voice was quiet. Jimin, if you hear this, please forgive me. Jimin began trembling. I didn't know how to protect you. The recording continued. I made a deal. Jimin's eyes filled with tears. With the people who took your father. Jungkook's expression hardened. What deal? The woman continued. I gave them something they wanted. Jimin whispered, what? The recording answered. You. Jimin covered his mouth. Jungkook immediately pulled him into his arms. The recording continued. But I never gave them all of you. Jimin looked toward the recorder. I hid the most important part. The tape crackled. Your memories. Jimin slowly pulled away from Jungkook. What does that mean? The voice continued. They believed your memories were erased. A pause. They were wronged. Jimin's eyes widened. You still remember everything. The recorder clicked. Then the final sentence came. And if you are hearing this now, they know too. The tape stopped. Jimin stood motionless. Jungkook held his hand. Then his phone suddenly vibrated. One message appeared. No number. No names. Just a location. Jungkook opened it. His face changed. Jimin looked at him. What? Jungkook showed him the screen. It was an address. An abandoned railway station. Below it were 4 words. Bring Jimin alone. Jimin stared at the message. Jungkook immediately shook his head. No. Jimin looked at him. They want me. They're not getting you. But what if my father is there? Jungkook went silent. Jimin's eyes filled with determination. If there's even a chance. Jungkook shook his head. I won't let you go. Jimin stepped closer. Then come with me. Jungkook looked at him. The rain continued outside. The apartment remained dark. And somewhere across the city, someone was waiting for them to make a choice. The abandoned railway station smelled of rain, rust, and old concrete when Jungkook and Jimin stepped through the broken entrance just before midnight. Jungkook held Jimin's hand tightly. You're not going anywhere without me. Jimin looked at him. I know. Their footsteps echoed through the empty station. For a moment neither spoke. Then Jimin whispered, Jungkook. Ahem. If something happens tonight. No. You don't even know what I'm going to say. I don't care. Jimin smiled sadly. You always interrupt me. Because I know what you're going to say. Jimin squeezed his hand. You're afraid. Yes. So am I. They continued walking. At the end of the platform stood an old train carriage. A single light burned inside. Jungkook stopped. Stay behind me. Jimin nodded. They entered. Someone was sitting near the window. Jimin froze. His breath caught. Dad. The man slowly turned. He was older than Jimin remembered from the photographs. His hair was streaked with grey. His face carried years of exhaustion. But Jimin knew him immediately. His father stood. Jimin couldn't move. For years, he had believed that voice existed only in his memories. Now it was standing in front of him. Jimin's eyes filled with tears. "Daddy." His father opened his arms. Jimin ran to him. They embraced without speaking. Jimin cried against his father's shoulder. His father held him tightly. "I am sorry." Jimin shook his head. "You're alive." "Yes." "Why did you leave me?" "I didn't." Jimin pulled away. "What?" "I never chose to leave you." His father looked at Jungkook. "Your mother saved you." Jimin turned toward Jungkook. His father continued. "She made them believe you knew nothing. She gave them false information and hid your real memories." Jimin's eyes widened. "Then why did she disappear?" "She was protecting you." Jungkook stepped closer. "And your organization?" His father looked at him. "It is finished." "Completely." "Yes." "What about the person who sent us here?" His father smiled faintly. "Your brother." Jungkook froze. "My brother. He wanted you to find me." Jungkook looked around. "Where is he?" A voice came from behind them. "Right here." Jungkook turned. His brother stood at the entrance. Daniel was beside him. Jungkook stared. "You planned all of this?" His brother nodded. "I needed Jimin to remember." Jimin looked at him. "Why?" "Because your memories contain the final proof." Jimin understood. The memory card. The photographs. The recordings. Everything had been connected. Jimin looked at Jungkook. "And you knew?" "No." His brother shook his head. "I didn't know what Jimin remembered until tonight." Daniel stepped forward. "The people who remained have been arrested." Jungkook looked at him. "You protected me all these years." Daniel smiled. "Your brother made me promise." Jungkook nodded. For the first time, he no longer saw Daniel as the person who had haunted his childhood. He saw him as someone who had kept a promise. Jimin walked toward his father. "I thought I had lost you." His father touched his face. "You lost many years." Jimin's eyes filled with tears. "But you didn't lose me." Jimin smiled through his tears. "No." Jungkook watched them. His brother approached him. "I owe you an apology." Jungkook looked at him. "You owe me 7 years." "I know. You should have trusted me." "I was afraid." "So was I." His brother smiled. "That was the problem." Jungkook laughed quietly. Then he hugged him again. This time there was no hesitation. No anger. Only relief. Jimin watched them with tears in his eyes. Later that night, they left the station together. For the first time, Jimin walked beside his father. Jungkook walked beside Jimin. The rain had stopped. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement. Jimin looked toward Jungkook. "You know something." "What?" "You looked ridiculous dressed as a nurse." Jungkook laughed. "I saved your life." "You still looked ridiculous." "You cried when you saw me." "That was because I thought you were actually a nurse." Jungkook raised an eyebrow. "Really?" Jimin smiled. "No." Jungkook smiled back. Jimin leaned his head against Jungkook's shoulder. "I cried because you came." Jungkook's expression softened. "I'll always come. Even if I don't ask. Especially then." Jimin laughed quietly. Months later, life slowly became ordinary again. Jimin returned to his routine. His father stayed close. Jungkook's brother finally came home. Daniel disappeared from their lives quietly, choosing a peaceful life far away from the secrets that had followed them for years. The hospital was investigated. The corrupted network was dismantled. The missing records were restored. And the truth finally replaced the lies that had controlled their lives. Sometimes Jimin still woke from nightmares. Whenever that happened, Jungkook was there. Sometimes Jungkook still counted his breaths when anxiety returned. Whenever that happened, Jimin held his hand. They never forgot what happened. But they stopped allowing the past to decide their future. One evening, almost a year after the hospital incident, Jimin found an old photograph in a drawer. It showed Jungkook wearing the ridiculous nurse disguise. Jimin laughed. "You kept this?" Jungkook looked embarrassed. "Don't show anyone." Jimin held the photograph against his chest. "Why?" "Because I looked terrible." "You looked adorable." Jungkook smiled. "You cried. You remember everything." "I remember you holding my hand." Jimin looked at him. "I remember thinking that if you were willing to break every rule just to see me, then maybe I wasn't alone after all." Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand. "You were never alone." Jimin intertwined their fingers. Outside the window, the evening sky slowly turned gold. No hospital alarms. No hidden cameras. No false identities. No locked doors. Just two people who had survived a world built on secrets. Jimin looked at Jungkook. "Do you regret disguising yourself as a nurse?" Jungkook smiled. "Not for a second. Even though you almost got arrested. Still worth it." "Why?" Jungkook looked into Jimin's eyes. "Because that was the night I realized something." "What?" "I could lose everything." Jimin waited. "But I couldn't lose you." Jimin's eyes softened. "And now?" Jungkook squeezed his hand. "Now I don't have to choose." Jimin smiled. He leaned closer. And for the first time, there was no fear behind their smiles. The story that had begun with a disguise ended with the truth. Jungkook had entered the hospital pretending to be someone else because he was desperate to see Jimin. But in the end, he didn't need a disguise. Jimin had seen him frightened, angry, broken, hopeful, and vulnerable. And he stayed. Because sometimes love isn't about protecting someone from every danger. Sometimes it is simply about standing beside them when the truth finally arrives. And when Jimin looked at Jungkook that evening, he knew the greatest miracle was not that they had survived. It was that, after everything they had lost, they had finally found their way home to each other.